This is Hunter Muse.
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
We are well. How are you, Charlie?
I am good. I am great. I mean, all things considered, this is such a weird time.
Yeah.
You know?
What is a weird time? When is it?
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's always been a bit strange, but I don't know. I'm optimistic. 2024 will be exciting.
Good. And Anarchapulco is coming up really soon, isn't it?
Yeah, Anarchapulco is coming up in 34 days, but who's counting?
How many hours?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're emceeing, right?
I'm going to be emceeing. As I was shoveling snow out here in Denver, I'm like, how many days till Mexico? Let's get this thing going. Yeah, I'm going to be hosting and emceeing it this year after being a speaker on 3 occasions and just thoroughly enjoying myself. I mean, I kind of always thought of it like, so you want me to speak for an hour and then I get to stay for the week and watch everybody else? Of course, yeah. Let's do it. And I always wanted to go like, they're like, what slot do you want? I'm like, let's immediately. First day. I want to go first day, and so that I can get that done and then I can go sit in the audience and watch everybody else. And that's what I've been able to do. And so, and not just sit in the audience and watch them, but then go like talk to G. Edward Griffin, who's just walking around. Or I got on an airplane with, I was going from Mexico City to Acapulco with him, and we were on the same flight. We were waiting for our plane. Poor bastard didn't have a chance. I sat down next to him and I wouldn't let him go. I just had a million questions for him. I felt so bad, but he was such a nice guy. I was like, talk to me about this. I felt like I was kind of interviewing him, but it's like, how many chances do you get to do that? Or you walk through the restaurant and David Icke's over there at the bar. You know what I mean? And so I was just it was like the Super Bowl of the alternative media for me, the times that I'd gone before. And so I really am, I'm just happy to be involved. You know
exactly.
What I mean? I get a trip out of it and I get to meet people. I love it.
Yeah. Are you going to be the MC for the whole week?
I'm not exactly sure. I know that one day that there's somebody that's doing it for crypto. And I do know that I'm doing the dinners and stuff like that. They don't have Ron Paul this year, but I went to the Ron Paul dinner last year and it was, he did a presentation. I mean, they had a microphone and he went up there and talked, and there was somebody that was kind of wrangling the dinner like, hey, come in, this is what we're doing. And so I think I'm that guy, which is cool. And then I know that they've got musical guests. I know 5 Times August is going to be there playing, and I had him on my podcast not too long ago. Met him just this summer. So
nice.
It's such an inspiring place because you go, oh, look at all these smart people that are doing all this stuff that's so much cooler than what everybody else is doing. Like, oh, this is like like all the crypto people that knew about this stuff before anybody did.
Yes.
They're filthy rich now. And super nice about it. Not like jerky or not like, at least the people I meet there, they're not like the Lamborghini crowd or anything, but they could fly down there on a private jet that they bought and then leave it there if they want.
Crazy.
So like I feel like, those guys were early because they were smart and they saw something. They're talking about things now that I have no idea about. Maybe I should listen. Maybe I should take notes. You know what I mean? Maybe I should recognize that these people are a couple steps ahead of everybody else, and maybe I'll have the disposable private jet. You know what I mean? Like, not that I'm motivated by that, but but as they say in that community, you pay the price for Bitcoin that you deserve to pay. So if you're Jeff Berwick and you buy it at $3, then you buy it at $3. You get rewarded for that. If you buy it at $30,000, you buy it at if you buy it at $3 million, if it hits there, then that's where you're in. So it's a varying degree of how early did you understand what was happening and did you act on it? Because I had to listen to Jeff talk about this stuff for a while before I finally acted on any of it. Sure. So even just the process of hearing it isn't enough. Like I was trying to understand it. And so I told the people, I told the stage manager at Anarchapulco that I've got, I went out and bought a special clipboard for the event. Right. It's going to be it's going to keep everything organized. But one of the things that I'm going to have on it is a lot of blank paper so that I can take notes like I did last year while I was watching all this stuff, because what a crime it would be to go there and not remember any of it, to forget all of the good stuff. And so I'm taking it as an opportunity to educate myself on things I don't know. And I'm taking it as an opportunity to network with a bunch of people that I don't currently know and say hello again to some people that I do know. And these aren't all speakers. These are people that have I've been going to the conference. This is my 7th time. This is I've been to all of them. I met a guy that's been to all of them. And so I got a chance to, meet all these interesting people. And you know what I found? A lot of them have already left their country of origin and have relocated to Mexico. So there's a lot of people that are, when I say, where are you from? They go, well, it sort of starts like that. And you know that they're about to say, well, I'm from Canada, but I live in Puerto Vallarta. Yeah. Or I'm from Australia, but I live in Cabo. Or whatever, wherever it is. So there's a whole community of that. And those people are super fascinating to talk to because they just said, we're done. And I'm out, and they left, and they sold the house and got the kids out of school and relocated them and they did everything that the people at the conference talk about. Maybe you should consider doing. They did it all. Yeah. And so you get a chance to talk to them, and he said, well, how was it? And they said, well, definitely don't do this and do this, but do it different than I. You know what I mean? So you can learn so much from these people there, and so I leave that event every year feeling simultaneously thrilled that I was there and depressed because I have to go back to reality.
Because Max is living there now too, right?
Max is living there, and I have to tell you kind of a Max Egan story because I met Max in 2019 at a wedding in the state of Washington. I didn't know anybody at the wedding, except for the people that were getting married. And I got seated at the wedding next to Richard Gage from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, just randomly seated next to him. And I'm like, hey, I've got a chapter in my first book that's called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. The chapter is titled after your company. He's like, what? So I'm sitting with him. And then I got a chance to meet Max Egan, who's there. And I said, see Max, God, I know all his stuff. And I know who he is. He's great. So I talked to him and then I see him from time to time at Anarchapulco. Hey, what's going on? This last one, we went to the Ron Paul dinner, and it was at this restaurant that was down on the beach, had like a beach access component to it. And when it all got done, everyone was kind of dispersing. And I said, well, where's everyone going? They said, well, we're going to Max's bar. And I was like, what? And they're like, Max Egan has a bar here in Acapulco. I was like, get out of here. And he's like, yeah. He just bought it. And I was like, well, wait, how far? I mean, who's driving? They go, no. It's right down the street. We'll just walk to it. And I was like, what? I felt like I was having an out of body experience. So and I said, well, where exactly is it? They said, just go to where the music is. Mm-hmm. So I walk outside of this restaurant, and sure enough, I'm with a couple people, and we hear all this music. We just start walking through this. We walk, and there's a bar. There's nothing going on in this neighborhood. There's the dinner place that we just left, but we had a buyout, so we had the whole place. And then there's nobody else on the streets anywhere. And there is one place, and it's just music playing, and people are pouring out onto the streets. They're just sitting on the curbs. They're sitting in plastic chairs. There's a guy selling beer out of a beer cooler over there. I come around the corner, and it's the craziest party in town, and it's Max's bar. And he bought it.
That's fantastic.
Like, how do you like even? I just kind of shook my head, and I was like, you know what? It's like only in Anarchapulco will you just have a situation where you leave the Ron Paul dinner and go around the corner to Max Egan's bar. It's crazy.
The last time we had him on, he was temporarily staying in somebody's pad in Mexico. He wasn't even permanently living there, so he must have really whipped something together quickly.
I think he was staying at Berwick's place.
Oh, okay.
He might. Yeah, I think he was. I know. I had Max on like 2 weeks ago, and in preparation for, hey, I'll see you down in Mexico. So, and he was staying at Jeff's, and because that the hurricane that came into Acapulco in October was brutal. And it just demolished that whole place down there where he was staying, and all those beach bars. The place where we had the Ron Paul, it all got demolished. Wow. So I'm just glad everyone was okay. Jeff was out. Yeah. Jeff's family was out. Max was out. Some of the people from the Anarchapulco crew were just out. Random people were out of town at that time for some reason. So
it's meant to be.
Yeah, I guess
we'll go with that.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're kind of late to the game talking about this, but I would like to talk about your latest book. I don't know how you pronounce it. Hypocrazy.
Hypocrazy, yeah. Hypocrazy. Surviving in a world of cultural double standards.
Yes, and we're goddamn steeping in that. What was
it is.
That inspired you to write that book?
Well, So I started writing it while I was writing Controlled Demolition of the American Empire with Jeff. Mm-hmm. I had done, I was waiting on Jeff I was sort of driving the book writing process with that. Coming off the Octopus book, Jeff approached me and said, would you like to write it together? And so I managed that process, and I was waiting for Jeff to get me his stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's got a million things going on, so it wasn't happening as quickly as if it had just been me as I would have. So while I was waiting for him and not wanting to rush him in any way, because I wanted him to enjoy the process too, I started on Hypocrisy and started doing that. And that was more of like, I looked at the Controlled Demolition book as being more governmental and structural and things like that. The Hypocrisy one was more of like social commentary. It was like, this is what happens when you allow the lies and propaganda to go completely unchecked. And when you allow these sorts of weird agendas to go out into the world, they infect people. And then you get these crazy policies. And while I was writing that book, I kept thinking, I'm going to have so many footnotes. And I have to, because when I write about a story where I mentioned something about somebody getting a fine from the city for collecting rainwater from their own roof and getting fined, I have to be able to footnote that, because people would just think I'm making it up to be funny. But I had to really kind of show, like, it is funny. I mean, it is crazy. Of course, it's all those things, but it's also very true. Here's the story. Go take a look for yourself. So I really went into that book with a mindset of document the crime scene. Everything that like CSI, like you're taking a picture of, like, document everything, because these people will think, because you're getting into the culture component of it, people will get super defensive. And especially I'm also mentioning, if you're talking about hypocrites, you have to talk about religion. You just have to. They're the biggest hypocrites around. And so, and people take that very personally.
Mhm.
And so I knew that people would want to pick holes in it if I got insensitive spots for them. So in order to mitigate that to the extent that you can, I wanted to make sure to document it very well. This footnote, this is about this story. This is where you can go find this. When I say that when I call this person a lunatic, here's the footnote where they were checked into a psych ward. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to just be as, and of course I've got a snarky, horrible, shitty, dark sense of humor that runs through the whole thing. Like it's almost like you can feel like I've got my hands up. I'm just going, can you even believe this? I mean, like, look at this crazy bullshit out here.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to just be a rant, and I didn't want it to just be a complaint, because I could have that. But I really wanted to, wrap it up with some constructive solutions for it. And it was funny because I always remember that I put a solutions part in the book because my mother-in-law asked to get a copy of the book after I'd put it out. She wanted to read it. She's not ideologically aligned with me, probably thinks I'm a crazy person. And I remember I gave her the book, and she found me like a month later and said, well, I just, I have some questions about the book. I mean, you do all this complaining, but like, where are the solutions? And I go, did you read the book? Because the last chapter is called Solutions.
Exactly.
That's the name of the chapter, Solutions. There's no mystery to it. So I was like, you didn't read the book, did you? But so I wanted to complain a little bit. I wanted to point out sort of the overwhelming hypocrisy that runs through a lot of this, whether it's at the school level, and people see it. I think that one of the reasons why people kind of liked the book was because they went, oh yeah, I forgot about that, or oh yeah, I remember that, or oh, I know exactly what you're saying. I never thought of it that way. So I had a lot of people reach out to me that said that I kind of condensed the way they were feeling about a lot of different things into one place. And so I thought that was that's what I was trying to do. Like, if we can sort this out, if we can get rid of the hypocrisy that runs through this, like, you should be embarrassed to be Gavin Newsom and go in front of a microphone and say the things that come out of his mouth. You should be humiliated. You should be like that clip I play in the beginning of Macroaggressions, which is Garrett Utley talking about 9/11. He says, a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the crime scene, if you can believe that. He subconsciously had to put, if you can believe that, in there, because his brain was telling him the words you are reading are lies.
Yep, exactly.
And even he couldn't even bring himself to sell that piece of shit lie to somebody that a hijacker's passport was found. So, like, if we can acknowledge that we have a problem with these people having the audacity to go on television and look us in the eye and lie to us, we should make that so shameful that they never even consider it. And right now, what we have a nation of people that do the Rumsfeld, as I say, which is mistakes were made. We're charting a course forward. No sense living in the past. And I'm like, no, let's live in the past for a little while. Mm-hmm. And let's sort out some of the things that you guys have been doing and the way you've been doing it and the way you've been lying to us. We got all the time in the world to worry about the past. Don't worry about the future. There is no future until we sort out what we're currently going through, which is a mainstream media, which is by all accounts a propaganda organization.
Okay.
And the legalism. And then again, I can't just say it's propaganda without putting the footnote to the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012, which legalized propaganda to be used inside America on Americans. So when I say that the mainstream media has turned into propaganda, I'm not kidding. And I'm not, and I can prove it. So again, it's like, I feel like if we can just let the general public know that the rules have been changed on you in the last 25 years or so, and they didn't consult with you. They can now lie to you and tell you all kinds of stuff. Yeah, you don't see cigarette ads on TV anymore, but you see big pharma ads because they get 60% of their ad revenue from the pharmaceutical industry. So do you think that, and so your Aunt Ginny, who thinks vaccines are safe and effective because she's never heard anybody really point out how dangerous they are, that's because they don't allow people on the network to talk about that when 60% of their ad revenue comes from the pharmaceutical industry.
Exactly.
So she's never going to hear that counterpoint. She's never going to hear the vaccines, big pharma issues, because the mainstream media is set up in a way that, just logically speaking, you can't alienate your largest advertiser. I mean, theoretically, CNN could do that, right? Like Anderson Cooper could have a Jerry Maguire moment where he wakes up, he goes, I'm going to go tell the truth about it, and do a big diatribe on his nightly news. He'd be fired on the spot, and there'd be 100 people in line to replace him. And he knows that. And so this machine will continue to do that. So the thing is, it's like, we've got to get honest about the system that's in place, which is the mainstream media is legally, the government has legalized lying. So do you think you'll get lying? Yeah, of course. Here's another one that I think people need to understand the same way, using the same sort of logic of the Smith-Mundt Act that I just mentioned. The Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 it's one of those things that you would have definitely missed on your history test. You would have gotten it wrong. All it said was, we've just come out of World War II and we saw what propaganda can do. It's really bad. Now, we're going to make this law so that the American government can't use propaganda on its own people. We'll still use propaganda on everybody else. Don't get crazy now. We're going to still do all that. We're just not going to use it against our own people. Okay, so then in 2012, Barack Obama created the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which then legalized propaganda to be used inside America on Americans. Now, I would suggest that you wouldn't do that unless you intended to use some propaganda, right? Yeah. You wouldn't go through that exercise. You wouldn't bother with all that unless you were intending to use it. Yeah. So with that as the pretext and logic flow for me, I look at the legislation that has been passed recently in the last couple of years, which legalized bail-ins, meaning that the banks can take the money in your bank account. Now, that sounds crazy because it's supposed to be your money in your bank account. But the truth of the matter is it's their bank account. And the minute you put your money in their bank account, you become an unsecured creditor. So legally, it's their money. And then they took this extraordinary step, much like the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, of then legalizing bail-ins. And I would use the same logic and say that you wouldn't take that extraordinary step unless you were intending to do that.
Yes.
So it stands to reason that in the future, they will bail in the bank accounts. Now, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't know when that will happen, but I do know that it will happen because they wouldn't have legalized it if they didn't intend to use it. So it's coming. It's just a matter of when. So that's, and I feel like with stuff like this, once people hear it, they go, oh, that makes sense. They just don't hear it. They just don't get an opportunity to hear it, because it's not in the mainstream media. And they've choked us out so bad in the alternative media through like demonetizing and deboosting and throwing us off of social media, YouTube, all that stuff. That stuff matters. That really affected us. I mean, we have to confess, that was a very devastating blow against the alternative media by doing that, by cutting out the financial support and by cutting out the reach. I mean, it's really tough, but there's such an appetite for good information that in the end, I think we will all feel that we are better for having gone through this whole situation of having to like decentralize ourselves and not count on YouTube and not do, like I write books, but also have podcasts and a radio show, so it's like, for me, it's like, I have to have a little bit of everything going. Mm-hmm. So not to mention a real estate brokerage, but so I've always kind of have to, but I was forced to do that because I couldn't build a foundation on YouTube because I was talking about the things that the computer would just throw me off. I put an idiot video with Ilana Freeland. Are you familiar with her? She's a sweet lady. She'll talk to you all day long about electromagnetic frequencies, and she sounds like you'd want to have her over for tea, and and I mean, within 4 hours, I got a strike for the video interview I put up with her. They just absolutely do not want you knowing what she's talking about, and so to me, I go, pay attention to her.
Yes.
Right. Like if they have decided that what she's talking about is like automatically banning. I mean, that video was up for 4 hours and it was gone. So like maybe she's onto something. So in the end, look, we in the alternative media as creators or consumers of it too, because I listen to all kinds of these shows and watch them, read all, as much of the stuff as I can from other people. Mm-hmm. We are so far ahead of we are talking about topics that's like a year in advance of where the rest of the normie friends are. Because I'm starting to get, I get questions from my normie friends today. I just got one today. Where should we move? What's going on? What stock should I buy? I swear to God, I got that from one of my best friends to just today. And it's like, it's because we're looking at all this information and talking about it, and nobody will acknowledge it until it's safe. And that's usually about like 12 months from now. Then Tucker Carlson will talk about it, or somebody else who's made, or Joe Rogan will talk about it, or Tucker Carlson or something. And then all of a sudden it's like, we've been talking about this stuff for a year. Okay. Like, glad you're talking about it, to be sure. But there is a calculation I think a lot of them make, which is like, ooh, I don't know if I want to talk about this quite yet. Whereas we in the alternative media are like, that makes us, we have to talk about it because we're not supposed to talk about it yet. That's the whole point, is that we can't, is that the second we figure this stuff out, we have to verbalize it, and we have to get the message out that this is what's going on, so that you can just be aware that these people are trying to manipulate us, and it's our duty and obligation to point it out to the extent that we can.
Yeah. Or in real time while we're figuring it out, we're broadcasting it.
And be honest about what we don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Just be like, hey, based on what I know about how these things work, I think that it might go like this, but as long as we're willing to be honest with the audience and let them know when we don't know, and not feel like there's any shame in that. Just say, hey, listen, like, we'll see how these things play out.
Yes. They
don't expect us to be clairvoyant, but they do expect us to be honest. Right. So like, I don't have a problem when someone says like, what do you think about the 2024 elections? Like, I mean, I have speculation. I have no inside information. I would, it'd be crazy for me to say, I know exactly how that stuff is going to play out. But if we want to speculate about it, that's fun, and we can do that. But I'm always extra careful to be like, now I'm talking out of my ass. Please, I want you to all recognize that right now, I don't listen to me. Yeah, and not as like a, not as like a free pass to do whatever you want, but just to differentiate between this stuff I 100% know. Yeah. And I'm positive that this is the way this is. I just always like to separate it a little bit. Sometimes I call somebody a scumbag when maybe I can't prove that they're a scumbag. Maybe it's just an opinion, but I try to keep my facts, and my opinions, but I don't know, it gets blurred. And when you write, you are the voice of it all. Yes. And so they can't help but sort of hear, I don't know. I can't, the first book I wrote, the octopus book, I had, because of the structure of it, I had the ability to take myself out of it for a lot of it, because it was quotes from 700 different people or 500 different people, 700 quotes. And because of that, you could easily hear everybody else's voice. But it wasn't with the Controlled Demolition book with Berwick, I was like, they're going to be hearing your Canadian accent when they read this book, Jeff, just so you know. They're going to be like, oh yeah, they're going to in their mind, you are reading this to them while you're walking Lucy the dog. You know what I mean? So I was like, just remember that that's the way it's going to be interpreted. And so I guess, we can't really remove my voice from the books, but I do try to differentiate and say, like,
Chris is
this I know, and this I'm speculating about. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Oh, you got the good version too. You got the one from Barnes and Noble.
Oh, what's the bad version?
Well, it's not bad. It's it's just bound differently.
Oh, okay.
And it's thin. That one's thinner. The Amazon one is thicker. And it's available at barnesandnoble.com and Amazon. And nobody knows about Barnes and Noble. Yeah. There you go. I liked the concept of Uncle Sam in a straitjacket in a padded cell with Thorazine eyes, disheveled, because I just thought, I always liked album artwork, and when with the books, I feel like it's I'm not a musician at all. I don't know how to play any instruments. I always thought it'd be cool to be in a band. So I look at the book covers, I go, well, that'll be like my album art. Yeah. And I like the concept of being able to look at the book and know exactly what it's about just by looking at it. Exactly. So the octopus in the world, and then the Controlled Demolition book, we wrap Building 7 with an American flag, and I at about 3/4 of the way down, and I said, Jeff, what do you think about that? And he said, oh my God, that's it. And then the Hypocrisy book is that cartoonish Uncle Sam, because we're cartoonish.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look at that.
It looked very Mad Magazine to me, which is what I grew up.
Yeah. That's what I wanted. I wanted it to look completely cartoonish and silly. Like how they say, "Welcome to the clown show." I wanted it to be clown show-ish and disrespectfful. Because that's kind of, I was looking at, it's like looking at America and looking at your buddy who's just like ruining his life with bad decisions, and you just want to go, dude, look at yourself. And that's how I feel about the country right now. It's like, just look at yourself. It's fixable, but you got to get honest. You got to recognize that this is you got to make some changes. You can't be $35 trillion in debt. You stop. This is. You know what I mean? So in this case, it's like your buddy who's just like $100,000 of credit card debt, quit his job, living, 3 months behind on the rent. You're like, dude, you have to make better choices. And that's how I feel like the book was like a reflection of the government. Like, you guys are screwing this thing up, and it's measurable and it's fixable. Which is, I guess, the good news, right? Because if it was like hopeless, then that'd be horrible. But the good news is that it's fixable. There's a lot of things that are fixable. But the bad news is you're asking people to recognize that we have a problem, and that's just too much for people, for a lot of people.
Yeah, and you're just pointing out things that are already existing. You're not making up shit and calling it wacky. You're pointing out the things that are already existing. But at the same time, I know that you are basically, if not an anarchist, then very anarchist adjacent. But you're not pushing anarchy. You're not pushing this sucks and I've got a better way of doing it necessarily. You're pointing out the the very inadequacies of all of this and just the fucking clown world aspect of it. But you're not pushing your agenda to substitute it, which I think is good and important.
Well, truth be told, I would probably fail some of these anarchist purity tests, even though I'm hosting Anarchapulco.
Sure.
Yeah. And admittedly so, like hypocritical on some things. Like I need to change some of these aspects of my life that are a little too statist, even for me. And I'm married to somebody that's not an anarchist, and that's presents challenges and things like that. So you recognize that. I don't like it when people force their ideology on me, and so I don't. To the extent that I can, I don't really want to force my ideology on them, unless you ask.
Yeah.
Unless somebody says, "Explain this to me," I'll take all the time that you need. But lately, like the people that want to argue or give you a hard time about this stuff, I've had to prioritize my time, and I don't get a ton of pushback, to be honest with you. Most of the comments I get are people that are sort of recognizing the things that I'm seeing too. But I've just decided I'm prioritizing my energy towards people that are interested in knowing more about this. I'm not going to force you into anarchism. That's the exact opposite of what anarchism is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
it's very important.
That in fact kind of proves my point that I'm not going to force you. It's like I would never want to force you into, but also I wouldn't want to be forced into something myself. So with the book, you're right. I didn't make it up. I couldn't be that funny. Half the stuff that's in there. It's like you read it and you're like, I am definitely going to have to footnote that one because people will just think I'm bullshitting them. Like there's no way that's real. And it's like, no, it's totally real. They sold this lady's mother's corpse to the military and strapped it to a rocket and blew it up. And then she found out about it accidentally. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, and you go, there's no way my government could be this absolutely horrible and diabolical or this bad with money. And then you look and you're like, no. These are the programs that they've spent millions and millions of dollars on.
Yes.
Gender studies of like turtles and shit. I mean, like that's why I said that the book is frustratingly funny. You know what I mean? It's like you're laughing at the absurdity of it all, but it's really frustrating because you just see all this inadequacy, and it's fixable, and you feel like, if only somebody cared, we could fix all these things. And then you start to get like, oh, well, is it broken on purpose? And that's kind of where my mind goes after the book with Berwick, is that like, well, if you were trying to take down an empire, let's just say, how would you do it any differently? And he's like, yeah, you're right. Like, if you were trying to soften up a country, a superpower, would you attack it directly in a physical war? No, of course not. That'd be incredibly stupid from the art of war standpoint, right? The Sun Tzu side of things. So instead, what you would do is what Yuri Bezmenov talks about, which is the ideological subversion. And you just say it's going to take 40 years, but we're gonna commit to it, and you watch. We'll fuck that entire country up to the point where they don't know whether they're men or women. And Yuri was right. And Yuri was having the conversations with Ed Griffin, right? Back in the 70s. And he was talking about how if you give them 20 years, entire generation of kids, you can brainwash them. You can make them feel however you want. But then you've got to have a 5-year destruction period the demoralization period. Demoralization is 20 years, destruction is 5 years, and then you have a crisis. But the crisis has to last for 6 weeks because that's the amount of time it takes to break somebody's brain. COVID. Yeah. And then he said there was the fourth step, which was the normalization process. And then once you do that, then the problem is now normalized. And in his description, he said in the Soviet Union, we had a problem in Czechoslovakia. And so we put tanks on every corner. And then they asked, how is the situation? And the response is, the situation has been normalized. And so you think about that now, like what's been normalized in the last 10 years, a bunch of crazy shit.
Yeah.
A bunch of crazy shit, like 115 genders, and we've got to have third bathrooms, and men can compete in women's sports, and we're going to have Dylan Mulvaney. And so you can see how things have changed just within the last 10 years. Yeah. And it's working. It's working. And this is what they call cultural Marxism. And you start hearing this and you go, so when Berwick and I are talking about controlled demolition, I'm like, they lit a 30-year fuse on this thing. You know what I mean? Like they went around and snipped all the support columns, looted the place, took out an insurance policy on it, rigged it with detonators, cleared everybody out, pushed down the plunger, and then collected insurance money. So like this was, you know, we just sort of laid it out there. Like, and you see, and you overlay Yuri Bezmenov's cultural subversion on that. And you go, well, that's how you take a superpower out. You hollow them out from the inside. Yep. Socially, economically, manufacturing wise, for the NAFTA, which Bill Clinton signed in the mid 90s, and there goes your manufacturing. So you cut them, and it takes 30 years for them to bleed to death. With the middle class dries up, and the blue collar iron belt turns to shit, and everyone in West Virginia is strung out on drugs. I mean, all of that stuff is predictable.
Yep. Or set all the divide and conquer narratives in motion, which we're seeing in, 100-fold now. The COVID, that just spread like wildfire. Gender, the way that the left is subdividing so much that, they're more busy fighting themselves than they are the right wing. It's fucking ridiculous.
And it's such an interesting thing too, because it points at a fatal flaw, which is that their narrative, their understanding of the world requires constant maintenance and never-ending hoop jumping and compliance checking. There is no finish line. Those people can never please one another. They're social piranhas, and eventually they eat themselves. But the problem is they do a shit ton of damage to everybody around them because they are so destructive. But this is what Yuri Bezmenov talks about. He talks about these people. He calls them describes them as like Hitler's brown shirts. There's always one of these groups that's dumb enough and naive enough to not understand the game. And they get whipped up into a frenzy like an Antifa type. And they don't even realize that what winds up happening, he says, with these people that collaborate with the enemy, at some point, they're very useful early on at creating chaos in the existing power structure. Yeah. But once that power structure is destabilized and the new group comes in, then they become a liability. That's why Yuri says they're the first people to be put up against the wall and shot. They don't understand this. And they'll be the last to figure it out. It'll be while they're put up against the wall that they'll finally go, oh, I get it now. I'm totally useless to them. I'm only good at stirring up trouble for the establishment, and now they're the establishment, so now I'm the enemy. Thank you for your service up against the wall. He said that's what they did in Nazi Germany. That's what they did in the Soviet Union. That's what they'll do in America. That's what they'll do. So it makes me ask the question, who's going to pull the trigger? Is it the 7 million people that have come through the southern border in the last 3 years? Because I'm an anarchist and I have a problem with borders and all of that, but we have to get honest about what is happening down there. This is engineered, and the people that are in charge of this are very dangerous, and they have a plan. That's why it's happening. So we need to be aware of what is going on. I fear a scenario in which, in a destabilized United States, in which 74% of the eligible kids or young adults in America are technically ineligible to join the military due to drugs, grades, or felony convictions. Mm-hmm. So we've already got almost 3/4 of the pool out of the picture. Too fat, too stupid, too criminal, whatever. So who's going to fill the gap? And the minute a politician decides that they're going to be able to get some sort of benefit from a voting block in an election, they're going to say, you join our military, we'll give you citizenship. And then I ask you, who's their loyalty to? You know what I mean? Those are the people that would be pulling the trigger. Yep. And they're not Americans. They're auditioning to be Americans. How American are you? Are you willing to shoot other people? Because that's what we consider to be American now. So all of a sudden, that dilemma of like, well, listen, I mean, U.S. troops would never shoot at U.S. citizens. What if the troops weren't U.S. citizens?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, we envisioned blue helmets, but I was talking about this today. Blue helmets are like targets, right? What if instead of wearing blue helmets, they were wearing U.S. military fatigues because they were in the military, but they were international troops? And is that the long game for what's going on at the southern border? That they're bringing in a literal army to be the U.S. Army in exchange for citizenship? I mean, it sounds preposterous right now. But is it? I mean, I'm just trying to think like these people think. And that's where my little conspiratorial tinfoil hat brain goes is, well, why do you keep telling us military fighting age? Why do I keep hearing that term in the media all the time? There's got to be a reason why they're using that term all the time. Yeah. Well, because they want you to recognize that that's who these people are, and then they join the military. How do we feel about that? Are they really on Team America, or are they on like Team Globalist? Like, who knows, you know? So it's, it's just stuff to keep your eye on. It doesn't mean like stress. It doesn't mean like build a bunker. I mean, it's just another like data point. It's just like another thing, like let's just see how this plays out. I don't want it to be the case, but I don't really know what else it would be for.
Yeah, exactly.
And I talked to Dan Lyman, who runs a site called Border Hawk News. And he was also the head of InfoWars Europe for 6 years. He still is. And he was in Switzerland, and he said that they had an encounter with some Croatian cops where they met with the police and talked to them about these immigrants that they were catching. And they found out some interesting things so we're talking about Europe. They all had the same sort of debit card, a MasterCard, and they traced it back to Soros Open Foundation by George Soros, right? And so, and none of that is really super surprising. The MasterCard component is more than likely because of their affiliation with the World Economic Forum, and that would make sense in some kind of random way. MasterCard being like deep state credit card, not good guys, right? So they saw that going on, that these guys had debit cards that were MasterCards they were getting from the Soros Foundation that had money on it. But what was interesting about it was that after they started doing like the equivalent of European FOIA requests, they were getting some information. And what they found was that those cards were being replenished every month. That they weren't just like your $50 Chick-fil-A debit card that once you're done with, you throw the card away. They're reloading.
Interesting.
And who was reloading it? The EU. So they were financing the migrant moving. The EU was doing it in conjunction with George Soros's group. And that's what Dan Lyman told me. So he's like, so that's going on in Europe. That is clear coordination. It's being financed at the highest levels by these globalist groups. He's like, so like use the same line of thinking and take a look at what's going on in the southern border. Mm-hmm. And who's behind it and who's making this happen, because they're running the same play.
They get like $3,000 when they come into the country, and there are people who are leaving the country and coming back. And one guy was talking about having made $15,000 so far because he's left and come back so many times.
That guy we should keep. That's an enterprising young man. I like his style, to be honest with you.
What I want to ask you about, Charlie, is we're 9 days in, and there's been a lot that's happened within this first 9 days of 2024. What are your thoughts on Miami? I'll just throw a few out for you and see what sticks to the wall.
Jewish underground tunnels in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Did you have that on your bingo card for 2024? I certainly did not. What is going on? I mean, I'm bipolar on my views on these things, because as a human being, I'm worried about what could really be going on. But as a writer, it's like an embarrassment of riches right now. Yeah. What's happening? It's almost like you don't know where to start. So I know it's going to get weird with the election. I just had, I've been doing a TNT radio show Monday through Fridays, 2 p.m. Eastern. Check it out if you want. On TNT radio, which isn't radio anymore. It's actually like video and everything, which is the reason why I have the green screen. And I had Roger Stone on my show today and talked to him about what he thinks is going to, happen. And, this is a guy that's been in, he's like, I know, he's like, they hate me, but I've been doing this for 45 years and I know how things play out. He's like, I can see, and he was trashing Nikki Haley, which was awesome. He's enthusiastically pumping Trump, which is funny. But he's a funny guy. So I just kind of listened to him for a while, but it's that election year. I talked to him about the October surprise. I described it as a vending machine for the globalists, where you just push and you don't know which can is going to come out of the vending machine. You know what I mean? Like pandemic. He goes, I think about that all the time. He's like, pandemic. He goes, but they already used that. He's like, economic collapse. They could probably do that, and so I had a fun time with him. He was a trip, and he had just recently, just last night, an article came out that said it was the headline for the Daily Mail, and I saw it on my phone, that Roger Stone was accused of orchestrating an assassination attempt on Jerry Nadler and Eric Swalwell. And that Roger Stone was accused of that because they found a recording of something, but they couldn't let him see it and they couldn't let him hear it, but they ran the story anyway. And he's like, I'm suing you. What are you doing? What are you doing? So that came out last night, and I was like, I'm the first guy to get a crack at him after that. Like, let's hear it. What did you do? He's like, I never said anything like this. He goes, you for $300, you can go get an AI voice generator. He goes, you know how much talking I have done on interviews throughout the course of my life? They can have me saying anything they want. He goes, I've seen videos of things that I thought were totally real and people were showing me the some of the effects, the limitations or abilities of green screen technologies and AI generated voice. And he said, so he goes, I've fallen for a bunch of these things in the past. He's like, I don't know what to tell you. They wouldn't even let me listen to it or see it. But they told me they were running it. And I was like, man, like, are you going to sue him? He's like, yes, very much so. I was like, I don't give a shit about politics. Truth is, my producer booked him, and I'm happy to talk to him because I think he's an interesting guy. But he was, you know what I mean? He wasn't like, he's not like in my Rolodex or anything like that. But I think whenever you've got an election year, the Roger Stones of the world come out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's always some fuckery afoot. It's just a matter of what is it going to be. And it's the October surprise with Hunter Biden's laptop and that whole thing. And people, oh, you're crazy for talking about that stuff. It's disinformation. And it's true. So what new thing are we going to be told this year is totally not true when in actuality it is? Is it? I don't know. We've started the year. It's been the year of Jeffrey Epstein already, which has been nothing that I didn't already know.
My love.
That was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I am still learning how to say Anarchapulco.
You said it. Now that the podcast isn't happening.
I feel less pressure.
I would love to go to that some year. Definitely. That would be a nice vacation.
Yeah. I would imagine that David probably didn't come because his daughter just died.
Really? Oh, yeah.
So he's probably grieving and dealing with lots of stuff at home right now, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good. Charlie's books are fantastic. Starting with, again, this one, his first one, which is so fucking, look how tiny the print is. Like, and there's over 500 pages. It's amazing, full of great information. And his second one is basically more of the same, only more sort of America-centric. Fantastic read. Not as dense, but very entertaining. Yes. You could even probably loan it to family members and they wouldn't stop inviting you to Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, it was awesome. He's just have to hit play and he just goes. It was great.
Yeah. I had a difficult time interjecting sometime. And by the time that anyway, my old story, my old dynamic. I'm too polite to interrupt. And I think there was just enough lag where even when I did try to say something, like it sort of got lost in the mix. So
yeah.
Que sera. His rants are fantastic. So
yeah, I'm interested to know more about TNT and how that plays out. If it's live in Australia or if it's taped and then airs in Australia.
I have no idea. I don't even know what the time difference is between. It's been a while since we've talked to anybody in Australia.
16 hours, I think, in the Midwest.
So maybe he's there, Art Bell, for 1 hour.
Yeah. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Good dude. Fantastic. Good to have him back. We'll have to think of an excuse to have him back again. Maybe we can have an Anarchapulco report. Now I have a hard time saying it. It rubbed off.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
God, isn't it? Anyway, I didn't get to any of my questions whatsoever. We got off the book and all of my questions were book oriented. I don't even know why I read the damn thing. I'm just kidding. But the detours that we made were enjoyable and pleasant and filled with wonderful information.
Yeah, there's a lot going on right now, and I think it's easy to focus on one specific news item and kind of run with that. And there's just so much going on this year so far that I think how do you determine what is the most important news story? Because there's just so much shit going down.
Yeah, and I haven't followed the Miami thing. I think I'm at a point where if it feels like maybe somebody is trying just a little bit too hard to convince me of something, with very little evidence or anything to back it up, not just evidence, but just like, something more than a vague rumor, one rumor. I'm just a little more skeptical than I used to be, and I've only seen one very blurry photograph of what is supposed to be one of these giant creatures, and I couldn't even make a creature out of the picture. Have you seen more than that, or have you heard more about it?
I think what I'm more interested in is how things are handled. So the fact that it has not been reported at all in any news site, any mainstream news site, that's one thing that leads to pause for me. The fact that the Miami airport was shut down, the fact that all of these things have been scrubbed off of the internet, those are the things that I'm curious about. And also the fact that 100 police officers showed up means that something happened.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. So I agree with that.
That's where I'm with that. I'm not really looking at blurry photos or any of that. What I'm trying to do is take a step back from all of that and say, okay, it's kind of like another 9/11. Like, what was the agenda here? What is the intent here? And it feels like it's some kind of a test run for something. And that's what I was saying to Charlie when you went to the bathroom. It's possible that this event was a test run for another event that will happen sometime this summer or will happen sometime at the end of the year. And one thing that Charlie said was that they do try to do some quote unquote alien invasion, and then it gets revealed that it's all bullshit, then that will be kind of the end of the government. That will be the final straw that breaks any credibility that the government has with the general public. So that's what it feels like to me. Like this was the test run of an event, and they may try to do these events all over the United States. And the intention would be to thwart an election.
Okay.
Because the Epstein train is not slowing down at any point. So that's a dumpster fire that is kind of brewing right now. And a lot of people are really going to go down if that story kind of continues to develop and evolve. And that could be one of the things that, snowballs the Biden issue with the laptop. And, so all of these things combined could prevent an election happening.
Not that I really wish the election wouldn't happen. I mean, I could care one way or another because it's not really an election anyway, but I really wish that I had faith that any kind of justice would be had, because I just don't have any faith in the judicial system. Just by all of the kinds of things that we research, and I just got done reading a book called Unmasked, about Antifa, by Andy No, and just how little was done about all of that, and how these extreme leftist anarchists basically just wreaked havoc wherever they wanted to, for whatever reason they wanted to, basically without the police batting an eye for the most part. And none of them went to court. None of them did any time. I mean, maybe if one of them happened to actually kill somebody, then yes, they did, see the inside of a jail cell. But and seeing all that politicians get away with, and all the things that the masses seem to believe just without questioning it at all. I really wish that I had more faith that some kind of resolution or justice was going to be had. But at this juncture in time, and I'm certainly not saying that it's always going to be this way, and I'm goddamn, I hope that it's not, because I am generally a very optimistic person, but I don't know. I feel like so much of the system is captured and compromised that who are the decent people left? And I know that there are decent people even in government, even in the alphabet organizations. But I don't think that they're the ones that are the gatekeepers, unfortunately. But, the only constant is change, and things may look pretty bleak and wacky now, but, who knows? Who knows what can happen? I just am not holding my breath.
Yeah, I don't think it's about justice. I think that the issue is that this is a distraction that will be used to take the attention off of something else that we should be focusing on right now. And that could be this avian flu, that could be, again, there's lots of fires already 9 days in to this year. So this first month, there's already a bunch of shit that's happening. So it's extremely possible that all of those things combined could lead to something, or it could be that each one of these things is designed to distract a certain segment of the population. So who knows?
I certainly don't.
No, and I really hope that this episode comes out before Anarchapulco, so that
it typically won't, because there's so much backed up in the pipeline. But yeah. I'll make sure that it does.
Yeah, so that any of you who take Charlie up on his offer can hang out with him and have a beer.
Pour one on the curb for us.
Exactly.
Not
for your
that we
homies.
would be drinking one if we were there anyway, but have a puff. Whatever feels good.
Whatever it takes to get where you're going.
Exactly. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to get a hold of us, the Melt Podcast at protonmail.com.
Keep those emails coming to hunter-muse@protonmail.com.
Great stuff coming your way. Thank you all who support us. It's very, very much appreciated on Locals and Patreon. To get to either of those places, just go to the links in the episode notes. And until next time.
And aren't we going to be we're on Rumble, Rockfin.
Supposedly. I haven't heard anything back from that yet.
Yeah.
If we are, then we'll already have been there for quite a while by the time this episode comes out. So,
but maybe not, because this episode's coming out soon. You just said.
I didn't say soon. I said before Anarchapulco,
which is in 34 days. So that's soon.
You're right. Okay, maybe not.
All right.
All right.
On that note.
All right. Much love. Farewell.
Meow.